Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Teres Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbach. As always, we begin with Akar Satayv to TorahAnytime.com for giving us their worldwide platform of Abatzis HaTorah in way over 130 countries. And also Akar Satayv to Kala Loshen for their incredible global network. Yesterday I got a call from Eretz Yisrael, somebody who was learning Masechtas Chulin with me on Kala Loshen. So it's really such an incredible global network, and we welcome in our Zoomers, and of course those that are here with us in our flagship station here in Lakewood, Agud Yisrael Beizev of Fairways Lakewood, those that are viewing us on YouTube and on the other Torah Communications Network and the other places that stream this share. We have a dedication tonight, and it's anonymous. Le'ili Nishmas Moshe Tzvi ben Mordechai. His neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. He should be a Melz Yosher for his family, for all of us and all of Klal Yisrael. And there should be Yeshuas for the whole family. Yeshuas and Refuas for the whole family. We do not have a sponsor for next week. If you would like to sponsor for all over the world, share on Parshas Va'era, so you could text me to 718-916-3100, 718-916-3100, or email me at rmmwsi@aol.com, rmmwsi@aol.com. Vayamas Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt, died. Vaya'anchu b'nei Yisrael min ha'avoda, and the b'nei Yisrael groaned from the servitude, from the harsh labor. So of course the obvious question is when there is a cruel king, if he died, why would they groan? So some learn Pshat in the Pasuk is that since the king died, the populace was mourning the king. So therefore they, who normally they weren't allowed to complain about their workload from the king, but now since the king died and everybody was groaning, they were allowed to groan as well. That's the way some learn. Reb Shamshon Paul Hirsch learns that way in the pasuk. However, Rashi is of course bothered by the if a wicked king dies, that's a reason to be jubilant, to celebrate. So why did they groan? So Rashi says when it says Vayamas over here, it doesn't mean Misa. It means Saras, that the king was stricken with leprosy, because the Gemara and Nadarim say 4 people are considered like mace, and one of them is a Messiah. And the king decided that in order to get cured from his leprosy, he would bathe in the blood of 150 Jewish babies in the morning and 150 Jewish babies in the night. It had to be fresh blood. So they slaughtered 150 babies in the day and 150 babies in the night. And therefore, since 300 Yiddish Kindlech, Mamish, imagine they went into the nurseries and 300 Yiddish Kindlech was slaughtered every day, they groaned. So, okay, and by the way, you'll say, why did Hashem do this to these Jewish babies? So we will employ the same answer, that these babies would not have been good. And we know this to be the case because that was the explanation that Hashem gave to Moshe when Moshe asked them, why were Jewish children put in the walls of Pithom and Ramses? So Hashem said they wouldn't be good children. And to prove it, he said you could take out one child, and the child that he took out was none other than Micha. Micha is from the lashon of moch, crushed. He was once crushed. And of course, Micha caused such sorrows for Klal Yisrael with the pesel Micha, with the idol of Micha. And I was thinking, and I don't know, I can't believe that this idea came to me on my own. I must have saw it somewhere. But you know, there's a saying, Al tistakel bekankan ela b'meshe yeshba. Kan is kufnun in the morning and kufnun in the night. It literally means don't look at the jug, look what's inside it. But don't judge a book by its cover. But here it would be al tistakel bekankan. Don't look at the kufnun and the kufnun. Ela b'meshe yeshba. Look at their worthiness, and they weren't worthy. Okay, but anyway, of course, the obvious question is on Rashi's pshat, which the Re'aim, one of the major pirushim on Rashi, asks, as the Sifsei Chachamim brings down. The question is, Vayomes Melch Mitzrayim, if it means he was given leprosy, then it should say Vayonchu b'nei Yisrael min ha-children, from the loss of the children, but it doesn't say that. It says Vayonchu b'nei Yisrael min ha'avoda, that they cried from the work. But according to Rashi, they didn't cry from the work. They cried from the fact that their children were being slaughtered. So the pasuk doesn't fit according to Rashi's pshat. It's such a blatant question. Now, I wanted to use this as a springboard to give you an example of Torah nidreshes b'shivim panim. That the Torah can be explained 70 different ways. Now don't get worried, I'm not going to give you 70 answers. But I'm going to give you a selection of answers to show you that you could look at a pasuk in many different ways. The Re'aim himself answers this question by saying that they did want to cry over their children. But since these children were used to cure Paro, it would be an insult to the king to cry about it. What do you mean? It's healing the monarch. So therefore they claimed that they were groaning about the hard labor. Really, they were groaning about their children, but it wasn't politically correct to groan about the children that were healing the king. So therefore, they complained about the avodah. That's the Re'aim's own answer. The Prashas Drachim says as follows: although they had a large amount of work, but they found a little bit of ease in the fact that they knew that although they said that they were supposed to work for 400 years, but since they had a population explosion of sextuplets being born all the time, they would finish the work a lot quicker. So that made the workload, it would seem to be more palatable. But now when the children were being killed, so then they didn't have that population explosion anymore, and they would have to work for 400 years. So that's why Vayonchu b'nei Yisrael min ha'avoda. That's the way the Prashas Drachim learns. The Yalas Chain says that we know that Hashem gave them an interesting blessing. Kasher ya'anu oisai kain yirba v'chein yifreitz. In direct proportion to how much you're afflicted, so will you be multiplied and so will you increase. So they approached the work with a type of a little bit of a blessing. That they knew that they were being worked hard, but because of that their families would grow. But now that they're killing the children, they couldn't look at the work as a blessing anymore. And therefore, Vayonchu b'nei Yisrael min ha'avoda, they groaned because of the work. My cousin, the Minchas Asher, gives a fourth answer. And he says that, as hard it is as the work that we're given to do, we say to ourselves, but we're doing it for the children. The work lends itself meaning because we're doing it for the children. But if you kill the children, then the work itself becomes harder. When a person says, I'm working for the children, but if he loses his children, so then it's much harder to work. So that's Yisrael minu avodah. That's just an example of here we have a very strong question and 4 different approaches to answer the question. There are certain times where we explain a pasuk homiletically, not according to its literal meaning, but some people would call it a Hasidic pshat. But it's a homiletic explanation. So towards the end of the parsha, it says, Teven ein nitein lanu. The Jews complain they're not giving us the straw anymore. They're not giving us the raw material. Uleveinim amru lanu asu. And they're still telling us to make the bricks. 600 bricks. It says perech twice. Perech is gematria 300. 600 bricks. So they're not giving us the straw, and they're still telling us to make the bricks. Comes along Rameir Mipremishlan, the great Rameir Mipremishlan, Zech Tzadik Levracha, Schusu Yagan Aleinu, and he says, Teven ein niten lanu. We don't have tfuna. We don't have understanding on our own to do tshuva, to prepare ourselves. But uleveinim, but the white hairs, Aymin lanu asu, remind us that we got to start getting ready. You look at the white hairs, as Ramila used to say, it's time to prepare for the final exam. You got to prepare for the final exam. Right? The white hairs tell us. Rav Dessler used to say, when I look down at my beard and I see some gray, I know already a half of my life has passed me by. That he said even as a young man. So it's interesting that I looked at this pasuk in the same way as Rameir Mishlan, but with a little different homiletic interpretation. Teven ein niten lanu. We don't have the tfuna, we don't have the understanding ourselves to push ourselves to do tshuva. But ulevanim, when we look at our children, and we see that our children are already old. Our children are already Zaydas. Then Amr lanu asu, we better start cracking. We better start preparing. We better start preparing for the din v'cheshbon, for the final judgment, for the final accounting. So it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was born premature, so they were able to hide him from the killer inspectors for 3 months. However, v'lo yachlu oid hatzpinu oisai. They couldn't hide him anymore, so they had to do something. The killer squads would come and kill Moshe Rabbeinu. So what they did something which at first glance does not seem sensible. What they do, vatosam basuf al svas hayar. They put him into the marsh at the edge of the sea. They put him in a little teva, in a little box. Question is, what was the plan? What's the plan? So the box would drift away. He's a baby. He'll die of starvation. What's the plan? So the answer is that they were banking on that they'll put him into the Yar, and the Stagnine Paro, the astrologers of Paro, will tell Paro, the one that we were afraid of was drowned. And which is what happened. Because after Moshe Rabbeinu was put into the Yar, they stopped drowning any babies anymore. So that's exactly what happened. And their plan is that after a little while, they'll retrieve him and take him out again. But what happened in the interim is Basia came and took him. And if you look, it says, V'hinei nar boicha. There's one shot in the Medrash that the nar boicha, nar is a youth. That's not Moshe. Moshe was a baby. So there's all shiloh what it means. But one shot in the Medrash is that the nar was Aaron. Aaron was crying that here an Egyptian woman took the baby before they got a chance to retrieve it. That's why Miriam was standing there. They were going to retrieve Moshe Rabbeinu. So there's an interesting maral. The maral, Zechtat Gevracha Schusi Yagan Aleinu, asks, very interesting question. He said, why didn't the Stagnine Paro see what was happening? Now, what do you mean? We said that they did see. But I understand the moral's question is, why didn't they see that Moshe Rabbeinu was taken out of the water? And that they still had to worry. Now they had the leader lurking around. They had to, there should be a Egypt-wide manhunt. So the Maral gives an interesting answer. The Maral says, because since he grew up in the house of Paro, in the stars he looked like a Mitzri. And therefore they didn't see that a Jew was taken out of the water. Now this is a very, very precise Maral. He doesn't say since Basia retrieved him. Because that wouldn't help, because we know Basia was Megaya. She swore away from idolatry and she was Megaya. That's why she didn't die in the Makas B'cheres. That Aguda says, even firstborn girls die, she didn't die. Because of she became a Jew. So, but Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, grew up on the lap of Paro. And therefore, since he grew up on the lap of Paro, that saved him, because in the stars it didn't look like he was a Jew. Because Kol HaMegadol, a person b'sach Pesach, is Kilu Yoldai. As a matter of fact, the Tufchi Yabiu is very interesting. The Tufchi Yabiu says over here that if somebody came and asked Rav Zilberstein a shaila, if a person adopted a child, when they become bar mitzvah, do they have to say Baruch Shepetrani? By the bar mitzvah, by the Torah, Father says Baruch Shepetrani me'anche shelzeh. Blessed is the one who now freed me from being punished for this child, because now he's of age. So if you adopt a child, so he brings a proof from here that you see that the child takes on the trappings of the house where the child is grown, raised, so that if you adopt a child, you do say Baruch Shepetrani on the bar mitzvah. Vayizoku, the Bnei Yisrael cried out, Vatal Shabosam Elo Elikim, and their cries reached Hashem. This, by the way, is a big source for the power of tefillah. Kikel shemea tfilas kol pe'amcha Yisrael berachim. Hashem listens to the prayers. I'm also cry out to Hashem, waiting for a refuah, complete refuah. Kikel shemea tfilas kol pe'amcha Yisrael berachim. So the Aleinu L'Shabeach brings down a very interesting piece of history that I found fascinating. We all know, especially those, my wonderful Zoomers, those on Torah Anytime, on Koloshin, on YouTube, that joined me to learn the Daf. I made a bracha already. We all know the remarkable power of the great champion of Torah, Rav Meir Shapiro. His idea sparked through the scores of years since he initiated at the Knessia Gedola at the time of the Chavetz Chaim Ozer, the Daf HaYomi. We know the power of the Daf HaYomi. We've seen it in Madison Square Garden, in MetLife Stadium, in grand shiurim given by tremendous Magidei shiurim all over the world. Also, he was a champion in Torah in making the first modern, sophisticated yeshiva with a dormitory, with a library, with its own sophisticated kitchen, with all of the modern trappings of a yeshiva, the yeshiva's Chachmei Lublin. So he was a great champion of Torah. But what is less known is that he was a champion of tefillah, of prayer. And he davened with great hislavus, with great passion, for quite a few hours, to the point that he was asked by the Talmidim, Rebbe, what's with the Torah? What's with the Torah? You're davening so long, you're missing out on time Torah. Could write another sefer. You could give another pilpul. And Hashem gets the message. So Rav Meir Shapiro taught them something which is very important to know about tefillah. Rav Meir Shapiro taught them something from the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer says, because the Chassam Sofer, the great Chassam Sofer, says, also used to daven a long time. And when they asked him this question, but time for Torah is a wasting. So he said that the Gemara says that Shloisha Dvarim Marichen Yamav U'Shnoisav. 3 things lengthen a man's years and days. And one of them is Hamarich B'Tfilasai. One is one who davens long. He says, anything that I lose out for my learning with my long tefillah, I'm going to gain when Hashem adds years to my life. That's what Rav Meir Shapiro says. So the Aleinu L'Shabeach gives us a historical vignette. Now, one who hears this might think that maybe it's a little Lashon Hara, but we don't know names, and it's for teaching purposes, and maybe on my own I wouldn't say it, but it's recorded by the great Rav Zilberstein in his Sefer, Aleinu L'Shabeach. He says, after several years of the establishment of the Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, and you have to know, the Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin had amongst it the greatest geniuses of the time. It was a yeshiva for the elite. You got into the Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, they trained you to be a Rav, a Paisik for a big city. After several years of the establishment, some of the boys started neglecting their prayer. They started davening later, biyachidus. They started walking around. And Rameir Shapiro was extremely disturbed by this. And he set up a vat. He set up a staff to ensure the proper treatment of davening. And they made rules. One of the rules is that the shul was locked from Vayavarach David until the end of davening. So that if you came late after Vayavarach David, you couldn't get in. The second rule they made was that you had to sit by your seat, no walking around. You had to sit by your seat. The third rule is no learning during davening. No opening a sefer. The fourth rule is if somebody wanted not to come to minyan, they would have to get written permission from the Vad. Now, the reason why why am I making such a big deal about this history? Because you see that when people excel at learning, the Yetzer Hara tells them, you already got Torah. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. You're beefed up. Torah is kisris b'fnei aparanios. It's megan amatzlei. You don't need to put so much effort in tefillah. Other people. You're from Hashem's inner circle. I once had somebody who did Chevra Kadisha. And he told me, I'm good with God. I'm good with God. And people fool themselves. They think that when they do something, especially Torah, Torah is the best of Chayra, I'm good with God. Rameir Shapiro taught them, no. Tefillah is our connection to Hashem. When you're learning, you're figuring out a taisis, you're not connecting with Hashem necessarily. Tefillah, you're talking to Hashem. And it says, Kol sheyir'asai kedemes l'chachmasai, chachmasai miskayemes. If your yira precedes the chachma, then you'll keep the chachma. But if a person is lacking in the yira of davening, then their learning falls apart. The house of cards falls apart. So it says, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Mitzri starting up with a Yid. Young Moshe Rabbeinu, Vayifen Kai V'chai. He turned this way. He turned that way. Literally, this means he checked that nobody was looking. Vayar ki ein ish. He saw there was no man. So Rashi says, what does it mean, Vayifen Kai V'chai? We know that Moshe Rabbeinu killed him with the Shem HaMefarish, with the ineffable name. To kill with the ineffable name, you have to kill the way they kill in Shemayim. It's a heavenly execution. In Shemayim, they make sure that nothing good would come out of this person. I remember I was once asked to daven for a guy. Somebody came to me and said that he has a good goyish boss, he's sick, if I could daven. So I said, I'll daven that he should be okay if nothing bad will come through him to a Yid. So here it says that Moshe Rabbeinu, before killing the Mitzri, a Bezdin, a human court can't see, they don't have a crystal ball. But Hashem checks that nothing good will come out of this person. So it says, Vayifen Kai V'chai, Moshe Rabbeinu turned this way, turned that way. Vayar ki ein ish, he saw that no descendant that is good will come out of this Mitzri, and then he killed the Mitzri. That's Rashi's pshat. So I was fascinated. There's a sefer that I'm using this year called Olim L'Trufa. And he brings down a most magnificent Arizal. Magnificent Arizal. The Arizal asks a question. He says, when somebody commits murder, we're learning Sanhedrin now, when somebody commits Ritzicha, we just learned in the Mishnah Yomis today, somebody kills someone, we put him to death. We execute him. Ask the Arizal, why do we execute him? Why do we execute him? He wouldn't have been killed unless he deserved to die. Nobody gets killed unless they deserve to die. It's Mishnah Pirkei Avos. So since he deserved to die, Gavra Ketila Kotel. The din is that if somebody is a treifa, that means that he couldn't live, then if you kill him, you're not chayav misa. Because Gavra Ketila Kotel, you killed a dead person. So if this person was supposed to die, asks the Arizal, why do you get a death sentence? Why do you get a death sentence? He was going to die anyway. So okay, we know that megalgal and chayiv al yedei chayiv, that we do bad through a bad person. Okay, he's a bad person, but why does he deserve to die? You got to hear the teretz that the Arizal gives. It's fascinating. Straight out of this Rashi. Rizal says the killer dies not because of the person that he killed, but because of the descendants that would have came from that person. And those descendants don't deserve to die. And he says it's inherent in the pasuk, shoifech dam ha'adam, if you spill the blood of a man, ba'adam damo yishafech. So it should say shoifech dam ha'adam yishafech. No, but shoifech dam ha'adam ba'adam, because of another man, because of who would have been born from this person. That's why the killer is put to death. So, the Arizal had very, very, very smart students. So Reb Chaim Vital asked him, but in the Targum Yonis in Azil, it says, Sheifet Dam HaAdam Ba'adam, it says, Ba'asidu. So that Ba'adam means Ba'adam, with witnesses, Dam HaYeshaf. So you see, Rebbe, it's not like your pshat. It's not Ba'adam because of the child that's born. It's because of witnesses. So you got to hear what the Arizal answers. It's like such ga'inus. The Arizal says, but what happens if there wasn't going to be any good children from this person? So then why are we putting the killer to death? He says, then there won't be witnesses. Then there won't be witnesses. If the killer, Taka, killed somebody that will never have good children, then Hashem will make it that there won't be witnesses that he should be put to death. The Maisa is, it's still, the Arizal says this, there's still an interesting question. The din is if you kill a very old man, you get the death penalty. But an old man can't have children. So you're not depriving any future generations. Or if you kill an old woman, maybe an old man, you can't ask, we just had an 88-year-old man have children. But you kill an old woman. So that's a question on the Arizal. Vayemoru es chayayim ba'avodah kosher. This Rabbi say, when we learn Torah, we need to absorb it. If we don't absorb the Torah, then we're just a glorified Svarim Shank. Or as the terminology in Masechtas Megillah, we're just a Chamor Noisei Svarim. We're just a donkey carrying Svarim. When we learn the Torah, we got to absorb the Torah. You got to hear a Ksav Sefer over here, and I think this Ksav Sefer is very important for people to know. Vayimaru es chayayim, the Mitzrim embittered our lives, ba'avodah kasha, with harsh labor, b'chaymer, with mortar, u'b'levanim, and bricks, u'b'chol avodah b'sada, with all the work in the field, as kol avodasam asher avdu behem b'farach, all the work that they enslaved them with. Parach means crushing labor. Parach means from the lashon of nifreches, crushing, to crumble, crushing labor. So the Ksav Sefer says, why does the pasuk, why is it so lengthy? Chaymer, levanim. It should just say, Vayimaru es chayayim b'kol avodah b'sada. Why does it give us the details? B'chaymer, b'levanim. So the Ksav Sefer says that kol haschalas kashas. All starts are hard. But after a while, we get used to it. You get used to it, it's not so hard. Paro, in order that we should crumble, kept on switching the work, that we shouldn't get used to it. Chaymer, levanim, kol avodah b'sada. And that ensured that it should be perech, that it should be crushing. The Torah tells us that we are charged. Many people listening to the shir are employers, are bosses. They have Yiddish workers. We're charged le'sirda by befarach. Should not give people crushing labor. There are people that in order to get their money's worth, if they have a little extra time, they don't want the worker to be doing nothing, so they give them something else to do, and something else to do, and something else to do. You know, when you give people work that they're not used to doing, it could be avodas perach. Now, I have to tell you that this is relative. There are people that say, you know, I don't want to do the same thing all the time. Variety is the spice of life. Doing the same thing is too monotonous, too boring. I understand that. I understand. But we have to know that the Ksav Sefer is teaching us over here that when a person gives to someone always new things, then it never becomes easy. And that's perech. That's the Ksav Sefer is giving us an insight over here. Well, I want to also say, I had a Maisa, one of my balabatim, this is many years ago, but one of my balabatim was being very maltreated by a boss who knew that he has this worker where he wants him. This worker had a big family, he had to pay their tuition, he had a mortgage, he was already getting on in years, so the boss knew he wouldn't be able to get another job. Everybody's looking for younger people. So he treated him like a paro. One time, this worker, my balabas, had a cousin's wedding. And he just wanted to leave a little early that he could go to the chuppah of his cousin's wedding. The boss said to him, you want to keep your job? You like your job? You stay until you're supposed to. So I picked up the phone, I called the boss, and I said to him, I just want to tell you I'm an observer, and you're behaving like Paro. You're behaving like Paro. You're learning the Torah about Paro, you're behaving like Paro. Don't be a Paro. It's a very important lesson. Don't be a Paro. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Leich Shuv Mishraim. You could go back to Egypt. This is already, boy, we cover a lot of ground in this week's parsha. Leich Shuv Mitzrayim. According to some, it's already 60 years later. Moshe Rabbeinu is now 80. He left when he was 20. Leich Shuv Mitzrayim. You could go back to Egypt. I know you were a condemned man, but the witnesses against you were Dasan and Aviram. Ki meisul kol ha'anoshim ha'mavakshim es nafshecha. The people that are seeking out your life, the witnesses that saw you kill the Mitzri, they died. Now, of course, the Gemara in the Dharam, on Daf Samach Dalet Amud says they didn't die. They lived to make a lot of trouble in the Midbar. Moshe Rabbeinu said that there wouldn't be any man on Shabbos, and they went and they hid man on Shabbos in the field. Right? The birds ate it. That's why on Shabbos Shira we give food to the birds, those that do it. But Kol Makom Shenemar Nitzim V'Nitzavim Eino Eloheim. They lived all the way to die in the Adas Kairach. So they made problems. They told Paro not to let the Jews go by Kriyas Yamsuf. They were big troublemakers. So what do you mean Kimesu? So it says that they became impoverished. And therefore, since they became impoverished, they were homeless, they weren't credible as witnesses anymore. And Oni Choshev Kemes. That's a famous Chazal. The Sefer HaTishbi, very Choshev a Sefer, it's not a modern Sefer. The Sefer HaTishbi says an interesting pshat in Oni Choshev Kemes. What we learn, what does Ani Choshev Kemes mean? That an Ani is like a mace. The fact that the whole world is black for him, he doesn't have money to pay for this, he doesn't have any friends. Ani Choshev Kemes. That's the simple, just like a mace doesn't have friends, just like a mace doesn't have hope. Says the Tishbi, you're reading it wrong. Ani Choshev Kemes. Only a chashiv, a person that became an ani, is like a mace. A regular ani is not a mace. He has his friends. There's the schnorrer's table. I see it. They sit by the table. They have already a guild. An ani chashiv, he was once a rich man and he became an ani. Oh, that's kemes. It's a very interesting pshat in ani chashiv kemes. The others say that's not true because it says the same chashiv by the Mitzayra and by the Summa, and there you can't say that pshat. But that's how they want to learn. The Tishbi wants to learn ani chashiv kemes, only an ani chashiv. In the Tufki Yabiu over here, he tells a true story that came as a shaila to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. A very wealthy man, after many years, was blessed with a child. So he wanted to give a fifth of his money, which was a huge, colossal amount of money, either to create a wing in a hospital for fertility, or to create a wing in a hospital to heal people that can't see. And he asked which one was better to do. So it's very interesting. Reb Chaim said that we know that the Gemara in Pesachim says that there's 5 types of moror: chazeres, tamcha, ulshin, and that's romaine lettuce, horseradish, endives. And whatever is mentioned first is more preferable. That's why if there's no worry about bugs, it's the most preferred to use the romaine lettuce. So to worry about bugs. So then the next thing is horseradish. That's why many people use horseradish. They're worried about bugs. But he says, therefore, since we see that which was mentioned first is more preferable. So it says 4 people are considered like dead: Ani, Mitzayra, Suma, Umisha Ein Leibanim. A poor person, a leper, a blind person, and one who doesn't have children. And since it says blind before one who doesn't have children, you should give your money to making a wing to help people to be able to see. That was a psak of Reb Chaim. So I wondered about this psak, but it says ani before all of them. So then give your money to the poor. Could be he wanted to give his money for medical things because he had a medical Yeshua. Could be. But, now, by the way, since I'm talking about this subject, I just want to mention that it says an ani is considered like one who is dead, and it says the nisayon of wealth is greater than the nisayon of poverty. The test of wealth is greater than the test of poverty. So it's not so simple to be wealthy. It could not be a life. There are people that say they wish they could win the lottery. Many people who won the lottery commit suicide. If an ani is like one's dead and wealth is more than poverty, it makes a lot of sense. Before we continue, again, I want to, first of all, thank our sponsor, Lili Nishmas, Moshe Tzvi Ben Mordechai. The neshama should have an aliyah, should be a meltz yaisha, to bring Yeshuas for the whole family, refuas, Yeshuas, shidduchen. If you would like to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. We'd also like to invite you to our nightly Zoom Daf Yomi. Tonight we had 41 Zoomers joining us live on the Zoom. You go to zoomdaf.com and put in a very easy meeting code to remember. There's a new meeting code, RMMW, all capitalized. Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss, all capitalized, RMMW. And on Motzi Shabbos, the shir is 2 blat at 7:45. Achamata zeh tikach biyadecha asher taseh bo yesa oisos. You should take the staff in your hand, which you will do the signs. An interesting thing. It's not something that we are accustomed to. Our Gedolim, our Admorim, don't walk around waving staffs. We're we're very scared to use physical things. There shouldn't be an attachment of avodah zarah to it. And here Moshe Rabbeinu had this staff. So this wasn't just any staff. It wasn't just any staff. We have to know that the Medrash Seichel Tov says that on this staff was chokuk the Shem HaMeforish. On this staff was engraved the ineffable name. The Yalkut Shimoni says that on the staff was engraved Ayin Shemos, 70 names of Hashem. So this staff connected every activity to Hashem, that nobody should think that this was Moshe Rabbeinu. You know, that's the famous question, why is Moshe Rabbeinu not written in the Haggadah, except for the pasuk where he's mentioned incidentally, Vayaminu b'Hashem of Moshe Abdi. Moshe Rabbeinu is missing from the Haggadah. It's like he was deleted from the Haggadah. And the answer is because it's to make it clear that it's Hashem. Lo al yedei malach, v'lo al yedei sar, v'lo al yedei shaliach. So Moshe Rabbeinu used this staff connected, Horei mes matcha, Kriyas Yamsuf is coming from Hashem. Now, where did this staff come from? All of a sudden, Moshe has a matter. So there's a famous Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer. The Pirkei de Rebbe Eliezer says, as it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, that the staff was created on Bein Hashmoshes in the 6th day of creation. There were certain things that were created at twilight on the 6th day. One of them was the Mata Shel Moshe. It was given to Adam. Who did Adam give it to? Adam gave it to Chanoich. Chanoich gave it to Noach. Noach took it into the Teva. So the Mata Shel Moshe has a Teva connection. Noach took it into the Teva. Noach gave it to Shem. Shem, upon his meeting with Avram, because although Noach and Avram, their life overlapped for 58 years, there's no proof that Noach ever met Avram. But Noach gave it to Shem gave it to Avram gave it to Yitzchak gave it to Yaakov gave it to Yosef took it down to Mitzrayim. I mean, not took it down, but when Yosef was viceroy, he had it in the palace. After Yosef passed away, Yisro found it. He was in the palace, and when Yisro fled Egypt, and he was in Midian, Yisro stuck it into the ground, and it couldn't be removed. And he said that whoever would remove it would get his daughter. Now Moshe Rabbeinu came, and it makes a lot of sense because we know Moshe Rabbeinu said, knew the Shem HaMeforish, because when he killed the Mitzri, it says, Halorgeni ata omer. So he killed him with Amira, and Rashi says with the Shem HaMeforish. So Moshe Rabbeinu knew the Shem HaMeforish. He took it out from the ground, and because of that, he was rewarded with Tzipora. That, by the way, is the most popular explanation of where the Mata came from. And it's interesting that I wanted to say that this is, again, if you don't like this pshat, it's okay, it's mine, so you don't have to. But it could be that that's pshat, kasha zivugay shel adam kekriyas yamsuf. That the zivug of a person is as hard as kriyas yamsuf, because Moshe Rabbeinu's zivug came from the Mata, and kriyas yamsuf was done v'harei Mata. Hashem said, raise the Mata. So we saw that kriyas yamsuf and Tzipora came from the Mata. Okay, fine. It also is interesting that the gematria of matter, Mem Tesei, is 49. And 49 is the gematria done. Right? Which says, you're going to do the makis. So we see that done is through the matter. But this is only the version of the Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer. The Ritva was one of our very chashuv Rishonim. The Ritva has a Haggadah Shel Pesach. In the Haggadah of the Ritva says that when Moshe Rabbeinu went to the sneh, to the burning bush, at that time, the matter came down from Shemayim to Moshe Rabbeinu. Rav Miller makes a very big thing about the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu turned to say, Madua lo yivar asneh. Rav Miller says, if Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have been interested, he would have minded his own business and not stopped to look at this burning bush, he wouldn't have got the matter. He wouldn't have been given the mission to save Klal Yisrael. You know, you have to want to learn. But anyway, that's the pirush of the Ritva. The Medrash Hanelam says the matter came from the Eitz HaChaim in Gan Eden. Really fascinating. I don't know how Moshe Rabbeinu procured it from the Eitz HaChaim, but the Medrash Hanelam says that the matter came from the Eitz HaChaim in Gan Eden. The Yalkut Shimoni says that it wasn't Yisro that found the matter. Remember, Moshe Rabbeinu was raised in the house of Paro. And when he was raised in the house of the Paro, he found the matter. This, by the way, is just another manifestation of what it says, Mimaka atzma misaka naratia. From the wound itself, Hashem fashions the cure. Right? Paro was the wound, trying to kill everybody. And there came the cure. In his house, Moshe Rabbeinu was raised. His own daughters saved Moshe Rabbeinu. And in his house, Moshe Rabbeinu found the matter, which would be used as the tool to do the Osais in Mitzrayim. Again, we want to remind everybody that you can join me nightly to learn Sanhedrin, 8 o'clock every night, Sunday through Thursday, by going to zoomdaf.com at 8 o'clock, putting in meeting code capital R, capital M, capital M, capital W, standing for Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss. Easy to remember. Motzei Shabbos 2 blot 745. We also invite you to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night and a good Shabbos.